Winter 2021, Southern Oregon University, Capstone. We were the students selected for the project, Long Jump Chinese Checkers.
My name is Samuel James.
I'm Tim Wanzu.
And I'm Jared Hawkins.
And collectively, we worked on version 1 of Fast Track Online, as well as fixing parts of RGO Online and the local Long Jump Chinese Checkers game. We worked on making the local game UI to make it more easy to navigate, as well as making the game setup options more easily understood to the user. We also worked on online game creation for Fast Track Online.
Some of the things we worked on were some bug fixes throughout the website, including the game code itself, and then also some UI changes all around throughout the website, as well as by proxy by creating the Fast Track Online version. We worked on some UI for that as well.
We as well made installation and server restart guides for future teams. These installation guides will allow the future Capstone teams to install the necessary programs and dependencies needed for them to have a test environment on their computer, whether it be a virtual machine or not. They will also have server restart guides to be able to restart the server and not panic and do it correctly.
All right, so to start off, let's explain the building blocks of the website so that we can actually talk about the changes that we made later on. So first of all, pretty much every website is built off of HTML code. So HTML is a code format that allows you to basically break up each part of a website into different blocks. So you can group together these blocks of codes that will divide up the parts of the website into their own little sections. Then you can use CSS in another file to reference those blocks of code and manipulate them to look however you want them to look. Additionally, the other part of the backend for the server is, or rather the front end, I suppose, is the JavaScript functionalities. So JavaScript code are basically commands to the browser, and some things that you can do with JavaScript include changing the HTML content so that it says something different. You can change their attributes and CSS styles. And then you can also hide HTML elements and show them wherever you see fit. And the website uses a lot of that. So essentially everything is in the website all at once. All the HTML blocks are in one file. And then the JavaScript basically manipulates what elements are being shown or not shown based on what you click. So essentially JavaScript is what allows that user interface interaction where they're able to click on something and then something happens.
We also are utilizing Node.js. Node.js is an asynchronous, event-driven JavaScript runtime. It's designed to build scalable network applications. Node.js is similar in design to systems like Ruby's Event Machine and Python's Twisted. Node.js takes the event model a bit further. It presents an event loop as a runtime construct instead of as a library. We also are using MongoDB as our database. MongoDB is a document database with the scalability and flexibility that you want, and it has querying and indexing, which is what we need. MongoDB's data is stored in collections. A collection can consist of many documents in which data is stored in JSON format of key value. There can be hundreds of collections in a MongoDB database.
We also used Ionos by 1&1 or just 1&1 as our hosting and domain service. So Ionos is just for websites, domains, hosting, emails, and cloud servers, and it allows us to have our local server with all of our local games and also a connection to our cloud server, which hosts our RGO Online and FTO Online games. We also use Pug. Pug is an HTML template engine, and it is used as the view in our index.js folder when we utilize Node to start our node. Pug is a compiler which compiles HTML code that browsers can understand, and it has really powerful features for things like looping and mixing, and allows us to pull users and room information from our MongoDB database easily and simply in very little lines of code.
So let's get into the purpose and our kind of goal with this project. So first of all, our client is Ray Vancouvering. He essentially created this website as a passion project. He enjoys playing Chinese checkers, and he and I believe it was his daughter came up with this version of Chinese checkers where you're able to jump multiple pieces in a row in one move. Normally you can only jump one marble at a time, but in long jump Chinese checkers, you can actually jump multiple pieces, as I mentioned. And you can still combo as well. So you can jump 2 pieces, then 1, and then another 3. It essentially speeds up the game and also adds sort of another layer of thinking to it, because now you have to try to figure out how to block your opponent from making a bunch of combos while still trying to get your pieces across as quickly as possible. There's also obstacles that you can add, which are jumpable as well, which add another layer of difficulty as well. Essentially, what they've done is they've created a version of Chinese checkers where you can essentially have an infinite combination of board states and possible solutions. So right now on the website, lastmarble.com, you can play long jump Chinese checkers locally, and you can also play an online version of it. There's also a few other games like Fast Track, which is the one that we have implemented an online version for, and then also a couple other games like Fox and Geese, and there's also some other versions of long jump Chinese checkers that you can play, such as Grab and Go, which is basically like a really shortened version of it, and then Going Home, where you start with a randomized board state, and then the idea is to get your pieces to the home. Basically just adds another exponential layer of possible ways you can play the game.
So we worked from a pre-existing code base from the last capstone, and part of that was having to learn and adapt to all of the dependencies for the online server that had previously existed and all of the structures they had created for making rooms and games for players. And a lot of understanding that was actually going through and fixing past capstone comments and reviewing all of them to see if they made any sense. And that actually led us to finding duplicate functions and bugs in the backend code that we were able to remove. A lot of them were things like dead links and issues like that. And working through this was difficult because a lot of the code is what could be referred to as spaghetti code, which just means that it's very difficult to maintain. And it means that the project has volatile requirements, which in this would mostly be the pre-existing dependencies that were already made for our online server.
We also had a problem with access to the cloud server of the online code for the games that's off of the main server, which is the local games. We didn't have access with the username and the password to it, so we had to contact a previous student from the most recent capstone team just to get the correct credentials to access the server so that we could start implementing the code needed to have the infrastructure for an online game. And during our first client meeting with Ray, he had only given us access to the main server. So this caused at least a week of confusion on where the actual code was for the online portion.
And then, yeah, and then additional issues with that server, the INO server, was lack of sudo access, which is essentially admin privileges. So we ran into a few commands that we weren't able to execute because of those privilege dependencies not being met. There was also some misunderstandings as far as like the goals of the project and the general scope of what we were actually going to be expected to complete. And at first, we actually thought that we were going to be creating our own version, our own website, and our own games. But then we figured out pretty quickly that there's actually already an existing database for all the code. And then just kind of figuring all that out took up a little bit of time. And that timeline has just been shifting around basically the whole time. At first, we thought, hey, we can probably bust out this in this amount of time. It'll take us like maybe a couple weeks to have an HTML page up, and then we'll work on some AI stuff and we'll work on some game stuff. But then, we started actually getting into it. We realized there was this pre-existing database and that there were just thousands of lines of code that we had to parse through. And that really pushed the timeline back as far as when we could actually start making any changes to the project.
The requirements and features for us for this term's capstone were to set up an automatic log of games played by whom and when, which we did. By having Node.js output everything to a text file called NoHup, we were able to go through the NoHup file, and we can also implement programs to parse it to return just usernames and room names. We were not able to get the actual user gameplay JavaScript up for our online game, unfortunately, but we were able to create easily accessible online features for FTO while also repairing our own bugs and some bugs within RGO Online. We were able to comment some of the existing code for future capstones, but we're not able to dive as in-depth as we wish we had because some of the older game files were so dense, it was very difficult to go through all the code in 3 months' time. We were able to create a fast track online lobby for 1 to 4 players, wherein players can interact and talk to each other in the chat and join rooms that have been created. And we were partially able to create and join a game of Fast Track Online to have 2 users join the same test page with a button that says press me in order to verify that each user is on the same page in the backend. We were not able to implement the 3rd game, The Swamp, as we are still working towards implementing the 1st game, Fast Track Online. We were able to implement several changes to the online version of RGO and implement our own Fast Track Online lobby. Originally, the login page had 1 button for homepage and local play only for the version of Long Jump Chinese Checkers that was already online. After logging in, you would then immediately be redirected to a page to create rooms only for RGO. They also have a joining room and My Games room to show all games that the player has created and all active games of RGO. We were able to implement a system wherein the user logs in and then they are then prompted with 2 choices, Fast Track Online or Long Jump Chinese Checkers Online, allowing 1 user to easily access either online game. Clicking Fast Track Online redirects the user to our Create Game page where they can create a game room just like Fast Track Online or any other game. After creating the room, the player will then be redirected to our debug and testing page wherein we were testing backend functions for user functionality for our game. We've created a page where all currently active FTO games are displayed. These are test rooms we created that will stay active for the duration of online testing. This also shows each game created by the user, even if the game is not currently active. From either one, the user can successfully join a game room. This also takes them to the backend testing page where this button will output the username and room name.
So the main brunt of my work for this project was on the local system, making primarily UI changes and also some bug fixes here and there. So first of all, on the right here, I have the currently live version of the website. I'll click local play. You can see that we're presented with 3 options, classic, going home, and grab and go. But if you've never played Long Jump Chinese Checkers, you don't really know what those are. So I did a couple things right off the bat here. First of all, on the left here is my local version just on my computer that I've been working on. So when you hover over it, it pops up a little informational text box that sort of tells you a little bit about what you're clicking. And then when you click on it, it automatically pops up this rules page. I did some rewording here and I plan to actually trim it up a little bit more just to make it more succinct in the future. And you have to click OK. And then you can go into the next part. You can see the original version. It just has this rules button down here, which I intend to completely remove because you've already seen the rules. But down here, it's just this button that nobody's ever going to click on. And then they're just clicking around trying to figure out what to do, and they have no idea. The next thing that happens is you pop this window up and it says select who is playing. Not a very informative message. So here I reworded that to be more informative. You click on a marble to toggle between human and AI control. Pretty informative. It lets you put a new name there. I also want to make it, there's a bug here where it doesn't have the 5-player option. I'm not really sure why. I think that might have just been a bug that the last group had. But I intend to fix that if possible. And then also, once again, just remove this rules button because you can see it actually starts to get strangely formatted, like it's not even in the little window here. I also want to change the background color, but I was having some trouble with the CSS to actually change the formatting, where I was having trouble doing any changes. So you click proceed to game setup, and then you're presented with another list of instructions telling you how to set up the board if you want to. This can be ignored mostly because unless you really know what you're doing, the obstacles aren't that pertinent. I'd like to actually just make it so that this is all one page instead of you clicking proceed to game setup and then clicking begin game. But at the very least, I changed it so that this button is here, right where you're going to be focusing your attention on, instead of up here in the top right, and it doesn't even say start game, it just says like end setup. So yeah, basically I wanted to design this as much as possible so that there's no way you can click through all this without knowing what you're doing.
The backend GUI changes. We had the creation of the functions for the FTO within the RGO server. Testing and verifying a successful room creation we achieved. We also created a login base, which we called the choice page, and it has access to all the online games. And this is for future capstone teams that are working on this project. Instead of having to implement their own server, they will be able to just redirect it from this page to their project, which is a huge milestone for a speed bump that we had came in contact with. We also resolved the server hosting issues by gaining access and figuring out how to restart the servers, which goes back to the guides that we made to help future teams better implement their codes on the live server correctly. We came into many issues like time constraints, obviously, which led to unfinished functions and unfinished gameplay for Fast Track Online.
Division of labor. We each met weekly for troubleshooting and planning on our capstone project in order to work toward fitting our project into a waterfall linear methodology of development.
The main thing I worked on was overall UI changes and fixing some bugs here and there. I was helping a little bit here and there, but the main thing I worked on were those local long dump Chinese checkers UI changes. Like I said, I have more in the books, and next term we'll actually have some more significant overhauls, more than likely.
I worked on the Fast Track Online room creation and the testing page. I did extensive studying of RabbitMQ, Node.js, and MongoDB. The FTO online room schemas and sockets are incomplete, but started for version 2.
And I worked on creating functioning game pages to test online user interaction with both the chat and for backend debugging while we implement our Fast Track Online user JavaScript functions. In summary, we were able to create a game lobby that generates an easy segue into us being able to finish the online functionality and gameplay for Fast Track Online next term. This will allow the site with our choice page to generate more than one gaming option for fans of Chinese checkers who do visit lastmarble.com. Many features may have not been implemented this term, either due to time constraints or to issues with access, including the Swamp game, but creating a base to implement more online games means that we now have the access and knowledge necessary to easily reproduce the functions for creating another game and creating user play for that game. And as far as game testing and the game page, we were able to get to the point where we are now troubleshooting the back-end connection for players and users, but it will still require quite a bit of time for us to finish the functionality for each separate player's code for them to play in the online game. It was a large learning curve for each of us, but I think each of us took a lot of knowledge away from this term that we will be able to present next term to finish our version 2 of a fully functioning secondary online.